Everybody's happy we're going to record, and yeah, brilliant stuff. Okay, so we are recording. I haven't seen any invites yet on a WhatsApp group for this class, so I don't know if there is one. If there isn't, and somebody'd like to take the ball and run with that, then they by all means should. And either texted me or messaged me yesterday to ask the question, was there a group? And as I responded to him earlier, there was. It was just he and I. So there are two of us. So if you guys fancy a group, it can be certainly helpful for everybody. So just that I mentioned that in the passing. Brilliant. We've one or two more coming in. So we'll keep going. Good evening. We're going to rock and roll this evening. We have lots of content to get through. We are in the third installment of this eight installment treat where we're kind of working down from strategy. We're getting really deep now this evening into operating model, which are the core capabilities that are required to execute strategy and deliver value. So at all times, as you know, we're keeping kind of trends, leadership imperatives, and sector trends, just trying to keep that alive. But this evening, we do a good heavy shift. We're going to get stuck into digital data and efficiency. We won't do it in exactly that order, but these are three of the seven core competencies. And we're starting to get into the meat and bones of what it means to lead digital transformation, because it's not as simple as ye olde butter knife on the right hand side. To master digital transformation, it feels like the Wenger kind of multi-dimensional tool of MacGyverish transformation. And as you'll no doubt be wondering at this stage, where does it start and stop? Well, there is construct. We're going to do three of seven capabilities this evening. You will be kind of approaching halfway in terms of content once we get through this evening. So we've a heavy enough content evening, and I'm keen that we get all with that. Thank you, everybody. You're working away in the background on a WhatsApp group, so that's super. Now, mental sorbet. I always just like to take a couple of minutes just to settle ourselves in. I'm 53 next week. As a boy, I love the $6 million man. I've been, distracted and abstracted by technology and the power and potency of it. And as a kid, I love this idea of we have technology we can rebuild. And I don't know, folks, if you've seen this. It's a bit of an oldie. There's a lady called Sarah Delagarde. Have folks seen this? Have you heard of this? This is a lady in the UK, and she has a large language model arm. Well, it's more of a medium language model. If you haven't seen it, I'll just let me play it for a couple of seconds. I just need to test to make sure you got the audio. So let's see how this goes.
Now, a woman who was terribly injured
Can you
in
hear
an
that?
accident on a London Underground train track has been demonstrating the benefits of a new bionic arm, which she says can read her mind. It is the first of its kind in the world. Sarah de Lagarde says she can once again hug her children. They now liken her to a superhero.
80% human, 20% robot. That is how Sarah de Lagarde describes herself. Her bionic arm is an incredible medical and technological advancement. She controls it with just her mind.
Can you explain how it actually works?
Yes, I have to think. I want to make a movement. Then I twitch a sequence of muscles, and then it creates electrical impulses via a server that is based in the forearm that then translated into a movement for the fingers.
A year ago, Sarah slipped while on the London Underground and fell through the gap between the train and platform. She was hit by 2 trains, losing her arm and leg. It was a grueling process to learn to walk again. But this new technology from a company in Leeds has allowed her life to return far more to where it was. It took 8 months of physical training to get her shoulders strong enough to bear the weight of the bionic arm.
What was the first thing you did once it was all up and running?
I gave my kids a hug. And I was actually a bit worried about it because it was a beautiful moment, but at the same time, I thought, okay, the arm should better behave and not squeeze them too much.
And what do they think of it?
They think that I'm, a superhero.
I just think that's a lovely story, and it gives me faith and hope and promise about the power of technology. What a horrible story for the poor lady. Now that's about a year and a half old, that clip, so it's kind of old news. But it's I mean, I showed you some stuff last week about in China, didn't I? I showed you the Chinese New Year, the Spring Festival, and robots on stage with kids. This is a slightly different twist, which is the merging. Now. Mechanical prosthetics have been around for a long number of time, but there's a new breed, a new era powered by the latest language models. As she said, the service in her arm, and it's learning. So I don't know if you spot it. I mean, her hand picking up the milk carton looked fairly clumsy at the start, right? I've kind of tracked this a little bit, and the arm is learning because it's learning how to read the nerve muscles in the shoulder, and it's converting that into a much more proficient and much more accurate arm these days. Don't know if it covered in the video, but the lady, she crowdfunded. It was 250,000 in the UK, and they brought this prosthetic, this generative prosthetic, if you want to call it that, to life. And not it's not just that that her specific prosthetic is learning with Sarah. All the prosthetics that are coming out of the Leeds company, they're all learning from one another. So there's kind of an exponential learning, and it's quite incredible, as I say, the prowess and the proficiency of these limbs. Really interesting story, and shows with imagination how we can solve lots of things. I usually cover a little bit of rolling reportage as I'm going along. These are some suggested additional readings you can have a look at. This evening, we're going to, talk about engagement and building engagement. There is a seminal paper from Google called The Messy Middle. It's over 5 or 6 years old, but they're over, 30 years old. And they have been tracking how people inhabit the web, obviously, because they've got the alpha data. And they did this really interesting study around people don't anymore go from awareness to consideration to purchase. I mean, if you take the simplest sales funnel in the world, it sounds something like that. It's this idea that there are triggers that, attract people onto sites and into e-commerce. But for a long period of time, people meander and mosey in and out. They search, they test, they forget, they get prompted, they re-enter. This whole idea of they're constantly exploring and evaluating and been bringing in their in-buy triggers back into ultimately a purchase journey where experience, as we've talked before, is cool. It's a really good read if you're in the realm of e-commerce, or if you want to kind of get in behind human behavior online or digitally. It's a really good read, even though it's a few years old. I don't think they've updated it, and they don't need to, because it's a pretty cool read. So if you get a chance, that's always worth reading. And we're going to cover a bit of AI this evening. This is not in the pre-reading, but definitely worth the read. The State of AI in 2025. It's McKinsey's Quantum Black, kind of latest insight. It came out in November last year, I think, into the world, and it kind of brings to life, a couple of things. But on the left, this idea that, proficiency in technologies, their adaptation and their deployment, leads to 3x returns. So you're here, you're learning, you're figuring this stuff out. So therefore, you're 3 times more likely to be able to create value with it. So, ignorance is not bliss, is the point. And on the right-hand side, then, they focus on where people are deploying AI to get value. And it's interesting, most people have been deploying it to get cost and efficiency, but not that many people are really finding a huge improvement rate, probably because we're early in the cycles, because the return on investment or return on AI, it takes a couple of years to flush through, and usually we count efficiencies on an annual basis. There's probably a number of years of annual budgets going into, and they're in the early stages of counting annual results. I expect that to change, but really interesting, and I'm certainly finding it in my work. AI is much more becoming a tool of innovation and a tool of experience, such as customer and employee satisfaction. So, look, they're just some key messages worth having a look in on that. Right, let's dance and get kicked off if that's okay. Quick recap on session two. Not going to dwell long on this. Hopefully, the pre-reads are useful. I mean, the IBM 7 customer experience trends, which you can see on the right-hand side. And we're going to touch in on some of these this evening, such as omni-channel, CX, prioritizing customer access to information, personalized experiences. They're trends. We talked about them the last Saturday, and we're going to do a little bit more on those today. But it's not just those superfluous, you can read that stuff anywhere really. I do love the essential life trends, which really gets in behind the social context of how people are really feeling around digital, because it's how people feel, culminates in how they act. And I encourage you as digital leaders, don't just look, scratch away, double click, ask why, and try and get into the emotional lives of people in the digital world, because in there is the real truth, and the essential life trends helps a little bit to do that. We talked about, if you might recall, this idea that don't be fooled by all the data you see. And this is a two-pronged thing. It's very hard to get data to prove that experience works, because nobody really publishes their data. However, you've kind of got to believe it. But that said, I did share with you some kind of articles, but very particularly the 2024 global study of return on investment for customer experience. It's the best public source you're going to get to prove that experience pays back in terms of customers buying more, liking you more in the digital world, staying with you longer, and being less likely to complain, etc., etc. So very hard to get data. If you need data, definitely should go there. I did give you lots of material, but on customer experience and customer centricity. But ultimately, I kind of this slide kind of for me brings the kind of the core messages to life. Number one on the left, you really need to understand the journeys and the expectations that your customers take and want. And those kind of design principles just help to kind of maybe sum up what the modern expectation is. I'm not saying they're perfect, but it's my summary of what I observe in the world. And on the right-hand side, customer-centric leaders, listen, they define those principles, then they prioritize for value, they map journeys, they build experiences, they do that iteratively, they test with the customer, they test with a colleague, they reward for it, and they just run this flywheel of customer experience. So that's what they want to create on the left, and that's how often they do it on the right. Super summarized, right? But if I really get into the heart of it, if I'm thinking about how does an organization engineer that, my customer-centric framework is the key framework I want everybody remembering, because you've got to engineer an organization to think and act like that. So that starts with understanding the customer, building the proposition, making sure you turn up in the market with the route to market, right? That you turn up where the customer is and present them the experience they want. And that all requires a lot of work down on the operating model, a really different change mechanism, shift from waterfall to agile, and all that kind of good stuff. Product management, we'll touch a little bit on that today. And of course, that all relates to a new culture. All this stuff we're unpacking as we go through it. But if you recall, customer centricity was at the very, very, very base of our 7 core competencies. Down the bottom, CX, this, balance between getting a great user experience, but also security, really important as well. So that's a little recap. Today, we are going on to march on efficiency, engagement, and analytics, because after you've set out to be a customer-centric leader, you then need to create the capabilities the muscles to start executing that. And those muscles very, very, very strongly link back down here to the core operating model, defining how you go to market and building the value proposition. So we're going to cover quite a bit of that this evening. So look, hopefully that's okay. I did just send out some reading in advance. Pop into the chat if you want to check in with anything on me or with me, and I'll keep going. And there's some, some useful stuff from Capgemini, both on banking and also on insurance. I usually find we have a mix. We probably have some funds people in the house. We might have some aviation finance people, so they'll be different. If you're not in banking or not in insurance, it tends to be our mainstays. And you want to say, hey, Garvin, give us something on, I don't know, funds or whatever it is, whatever you. And we've had loads of people from non-financial services with us. Had a couple of people from the life sciences last year, a couple of people from the auto sector as well. So if you're not from the financial services sector and you want to get a lens on where you are from, will you let me know in the chat or just message me and I'll try and include that in. But there's two good, banking trends and insurance trends reports with Capgemini. Do suggest you have a look at that. There's also always some great reading from Accenture, building the next generation of banking. This 2025 report, really good on the top trends. Can't summarize it all, but it's a really nice document. Go in and have a look at it. It does talk quite a bit about AI, which of course is the soup du jour at the moment, but it's a very broad perspective on what's shaping banking today and tomorrow. And it's, pretty much, applicable to insurance and the broader industry in general. So banking is a good catch-all. So I do encourage you of all of them actually to read this one. It's the most in-depth, a bit like the life trends from Accenture. This The Future is Back is a really good read as well. Data, obviously in lots of people's minds. So the Forbes article on 10 ways big data is revolutionizing marketing and sales. I'm going to touch a bit on marketing and sales today. So worth a little read, and it kind of links to the messy middle from Google. This whole idea of how do we track and extract behaviors such that we can make our experiences more prominent, more progressive, and certainly more potent, to use that word again. And of course, if you have the data to know that and see that, that data is really important then when you train your AI to automate how you deliver that. And kind of, if you think of AI, it's not simple, but it's kind of anchored on those kind of concepts. So that's worth having a look at. And if you really want to dive into AI, the executive guide from McKinsey, a couple of years old, but it's always really good in terms of just breaking out machine learning, different types, model explainability, deep learning, and so on. So if you want to kind of nerd out a wee bit on that, of course, you can always just go to your local friendly large language model and ask it, and it'll tell you pretty much everything you need to know as well. So back to the topics of this evening. Everyone okay? How am I doing? Better check in. All right. Everybody good? Yeah, I'm gonna take that as go. You just folks just jump in. Don't, use the chat, but I can't always see it. So thanks for the thumbs up, Jack, or Sylvia. Was it Sylvia? Thank you. Just shout if you need anything. Thanks, Renan, as well. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into efficiency, which seems like, and I sent all these slides out last week, and I'll keep doing that. I'll send the slides out in advance, so hopefully you got a chance to read them. I'm not going to read them at you, for you. That's up to you. I'm just going to give you the headlines. And you might say that, oh my God, Garvin, why, man, are you jumping from customer centricity into efficiency? That's not a straight line. And I disagree for the following reason. If you want to transform, if you want to shift the emphasis and the very essence of your organization to become customer centric, mostly, I'm sure loads of you are there already, right? But lots of the time, I find we're not. And if you want to take on that endeavor to reorientate to customer centricity and then build all the capabilities like digital engagement and AI, you need resource, you need capacity, you need runway. So we've got to create that in the first instance. The one killer move I have experienced myself, 20 something years doing it, is that folks don't go backwards to go forwards. And of course, everyone wants to go forward, no one wants to go backwards. But sometimes you've just got to clear out the closet. You've got to do some spring cleaning. You've got to create some space and capacity. But it's not only about that. Efficiency is also about removing friction. And you can do both at the same time. You can look at your journeys, you can prune them and trim them and take down all the redundant steps. Really, move from 60 clicks to 6, right? And that helps you improve the customer experience once you don't overdo it and take out important steps from a risk or a compliance, or even from a customer experience perspective. You can go over it easy. That's a factor as well. But in the main, we always find that there's waste in journey. So the idea is, how do we take a systematic approach to identifying where there's waste in the system? And by taking out that waste, you improve the experience. And really importantly, you create capacity, not just for improving that experience, but actually for building and deploying proposition and ultimately building value with digital, with AI, through innovation, through agile, and through being open, which we of course all cover in this module. Hopefully that makes sense. Really important to kind of make that again a simple statement. The journey to customer centricity is through efficiency, because you remove waste, make it nicer to do business with you, and you create capacity for further investment. Really simple, and that's the kind of anchor. Now, how do you do that, right? So, I found this model. It's kind of an amalgamation. When you work with Bain and McKinsey and like over the years, you figure out and you learn how they all approach it. And this is kind of a summary amalgamation of kind of the best kind of thinking about how to go at creative efficiency. And in here, therefore, you find 10 levers for simplifying things and creating capacity, because simplification for capacity is that whole idea of improving experience and creating runway for development. So, and why do we do that? Well, we want to remove fat, make it easier to do business. We want to reduce costs, which creates capacity. Oftentimes, extra steps, friction introduces risk. So when we're looking at simplification, we're also trying to remove risk, because risk is experience. So the less risk, the better the experience. The less risk, the less cost. It's indirect cost usually. And of course, in doing this, we usually find that there's always waste, and there's always the Pareto principle. So let me bring that to life. I mean, you can see the 10 levers. Some are in the front of the house, some are in the back of the house. So product simplification. I've done this many times, where I go in and work with an organization and I say, show me all your products. And then I say, show me the return of product. And they go, what do you mean? And I say, show me the P&L for each product, which is, what's the investment we have to sustain? So almost a capex of product versus the revenue stream from the product. So what are we investing in maintaining products, and what is the revenue we get from products? And I always find, there and thereabouts, that Pareto to some degree or other applies. And what does that mean? That means that 80% of your products will only be generating 20% of your revenue, but probably costing you 80% of your capex deployed on product. Ergo, the opposite is true, in that 20% of your products are creating 80% of your income, but only necessitating 20% of your investment. And what we like to do then is we double and triple click Pareto, because when we identify the 80, because it's really hard to get rid of 80% of your products and isolate it to 20% of your income. It's not that simple. It never is. But what we tend to do is we say, okay, now we have got economic baseline, the 2080, from a product profitability or P&L perspective. And then we say, of the 80%, let's do the Pareto on 80-20. And then NATO, let's do an 80-20 as well. And we start to isolate the value destroyers. And what we tend to do, and it's really hard in an organizational context, is we start removing those products because they're destroying value, which means, and we have to do it right for the customer, right? If we're going to remove, and it's usually front book stuff, right? Not necessarily back book stuff. Sometimes we have to close back book products, but usually it's about front book stuff. And if we take this kind of systematic approach to kind of break down where's the value destroyers, we typically can remove significant amounts of capex or organizational capex, if you want to put it that way, and start to clear capacity. And probably by the fact that they're not profitable products, you're probably also, or even the way they're deployed, but that could come down to process simplification, customer service experience simplification. It's this method, it's this philosophy that I'm encouraging that we do. Nader, I've been leaving you hanging for a moment. You have a question.
One of the main challenges in order to identify the right idea or the right product is the business case. Sometimes you don't have the enough information or maybe the enough experience in order or enough metrics in order to build the business case.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 80% of our products can generate 20% of revenue,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to be one step before this
Yep.
statement, how to select the product and to build the business case.
Yeah. It's just, I think there's two components to that, and a great query. So one of them is I often find we don't have the data right in the first place when you go to do these exercises. And what I say is no new data. What we do is we start creating proxies, because when you sit down with business people, and you start having a discussion about, well, what revenue do you think we're getting? What effort is going into that? You start to build a picture. So you can be really scientific about it, and I've done really scientific programs there, and I've done what I call proxy programs, which is just getting people to think through and make some calls around where's the value being destroyed. So that's kind of a bit about if you find that your data is lacking. So I don't know if that's part of your question, but that's front of center for me. And the other thing I would say is, I mean, business case, schmizness case, kind of, is my approach. Like, in paper never refuses ink. I mean, I've written so many cases, and I'm usually much more interested in what's happening in the wild as opposed to what happened on the PowerPoint. And I always really encourage organizations to spend less on the business case. I know you have to, right? Of course you do, but even apply simplification to business case development, which is, instead of just spending your effort on the business case, start thinking about how you're going to operationalize the data and maybe some AI to help you build a kind of perpetual analysis of your product profitability. If you go in and sit down with a digital leader, they've got their products on dashboards. They know where they're making money day in and day out. Anyway, at the risk of waffling, Nader, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yes, it had been answered, but the issue that in one of my projects, the business case had been built mainly emotionally, and everyone has the emotion that this product is going to fly and get revenue, and
As the business case. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you are MVP, starting with MVP or starting with something small and testing and evaluating while working.
Yeah, but it's like brilliant that you're bringing it to life, right? It's kind of back to this whole kind of flywheel that I mentioned here, right? So you listen, you identify, you prioritize as best you can, you map, you build, you deploy, you do your MVP. The most important thing is you test and reward for good behavior, both the customer and the organization, and then you bring that back in. You're listening to that all the time. So the listening part should be perpetual, Nader. And that's a hop that people have to make, but it is a critical hop. Second thing that you've said, really important point, right? Which is everyone's emotionally invested in their products, in their processes, in their, their service, their channels, even in their partners, in their project delivery mechanisms. Like, everyone's invested, right? This is probably, for me, the hardest thing to do. It's even harder than trying to be customer centric, because people are emotionally invested, and it's bloody hard to let go, isn't it? Like, why do our houses, like maybe you're brilliant, and we're okay in this house, but like we still have junk. I go down to my wardrobe and have a look, and my wife grabs me by the ear every now and then. She said, "When's the last time you wore that shirt, Garvin?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking of wearing it next week." Like, I won't answer because I know. So we have a reluctance to let go, particularly if we've vested our time and effort on building it, right? There is a bias, a heuristic, and I just can't remember the name of it. So, Nader, really good, important point, right? Which is you've got to train the organization to become slavishly disciplined about saying goodbye to old friends for the benefit of newer ones, if that kind of makes sense. So, Nader, hopefully we've covered a couple of good points in your question. Is that okay?
This is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great input. Please, everybody, jump in as we go. But I do need to be careful in time. Do you know what? I rushed in from the train. I don't have a clock in front of me, and the slides are up. What time is it, folks? How am I doing? So just give me a time check there.
25 to 8.
Okay, right. I better keep moving. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that jump in. Right. So, I mean, that's the essence of what I wanted to share with you. You guys can read the rest of the slides, and I do encourage you because they kind of start then to double click into, what are the practices of people who do this well? When, the point we've just made, making sure we constantly capture insights, that we bring them to life through visualization, so we can see where the value is being destroyed. I love red pen. Big red pens. We're losing value here. You've got to motivate the organization and highlight where there's waste. Now, it's not just profitability, right? It's also really important when it comes to experience. 60 steps. Have a look at the 60 steps. Which ones are really bugging customers or partners, whoever it is, and take them out. Targeted interventions. Now, there's lots of ways to do targeted interventions. Killing silly rules, one of my favorite projects. So this is where we don't need technology. It's just having a look and saying, why are we asking the customer 3 times to confirm their address? Like, why isn't it 2? Why isn't it just 1? Like, so there's always silly rules going on, right? So, even those things, but you can have, there's automation, there's digitalization, there's offshoring, outsourcing, there's nearshoring, there's inshoring, there's lots of things you can do. So, and that, yeah, we can't dive into all the mechanics, right? But, you need to know where the pain is and the waste is. You need to have targeted interventions, so the right intervention to go after it. You need to look right across your journeys and your value chains and your processes, and as much as you can, trying to, again, simplification, trying to identify the same way of doing things in different journeys. So that's brilliant because that improves the customer experience. It also creates flow in the organization. We know how we do this, whether it's, onboarding of a business customer, a wealth customer, a retail customer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to build up new skills and new aptitudes, and that's to the aptitude point. That means typically you've got to create the environment for people to want to simplify, because, as I say, it's a hard thing to do, and it should just be a continuous thing that they do. This slide I've just got, some of the tools and conditions to support. So there's really good process technology these days where you can actually put your processes into AI. When I was doing this stuff 10 years ago, there's brilliant AI now, which actually help you identify where the pain is and what to prioritize and how to go after it. So, the answers are all around us, but there's a whole slew of things. And I do think rewards on the right-hand side is really important. So, I use case, was in a bank, and we were running simplification programs, and we were asking the front line to simplify their product range, while at the same time we were rewarding them for selling more. And I mean, translate that now into a confused front line, their line managers were saying you need to sell more of this, and then the project team were kind of saying, well, you need to stop selling these products. It just creates friction, right? So that's another kind of friction. So you need to also simplify the rewards, so you're incentivizing the right behavior. Again, you can read the broader list of things there. And if you want to kind of just get an idea of the right interventions, depending on the sophistication, complexity, the degree of scope of, whether it's process or service or product simplification, whatever it is, you can apply different levers, and they are applied in different ways in different circumstances. So it's not one rule for all. We need to be very focused and intervene. And in this slide, you kind of just look in at a difference between BPO and continuous improvement. So it's kind of a double click in. They're very different. You use these approaches depending on the degree of change, the goal that you're chasing, the risk kind of profiling behind it, etc., etc. And all the time with these slides, by the way, down on the right-hand side, you'll usually find, and hopefully the links work. Sometimes they don't, and that's just because the links go out of date. I'm sorry if that has happened. But, if it has, just go back and, search Deloitte three-pillar approach to simplification. You'll typically find it. So don't get too frustrated with the links. Typically, with good search or an LLM, you'll get there. So that's what I wanted to cover on efficiency and simplification. It's discipline, it's mindset. It's necessary to improve experience and create capacity, so you can shift over to building new methods, means, and valuable engagements. So, digital in many ways started of course, with the web, right? Because long before we called it digital, we used the term online. So I used to lead online 20 something years ago in Danske Bank, and then before digital came. So oftentimes when we think about, digital, we think about, where the customer is. And the big shift 30, 40 years ago was we shifted from being everywhere physically to starting to become lots of places, and now in most places virtually or digitally. So this kind of broad theme is around when we're existing in digital but also physical environments, so phygital as we call it. We have to think about how do we deliver experiences across the divide of digital and physical, i.e. in that digital world. And meeting the market, or meeting your colleague or meeting your partner, right? Because it can be market, a customer or client, and it can be colleague. Building a means to engage the end user to facilitate them experiencing and starting a journey is kind of what this is all about. And it links back, as I said, we would do in this module, there'll be a crisscross between some of the core capabilities and so on. So back to customer centricity that we would have covered a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this idea of building up the customer centric flywheel of listening, connecting, disturbing, mapping, and prioritizing. We touched on that already this evening. I mean, that's a nice philosophy, but actually, try and do it. And doing it's hard, really hard. Thankfully, there are methods and tools to help you do that. And those methods and tools are, developing a vision for the experience you want the client to experience, and then converting that into service blueprints. I think I showed you this 2 Saturdays before. So up the top, you've got the steps in an experience, but in the service blueprint, you start to step out and articulate, what channels, what touch points, that experience should be delivered through, whether it's web or whether it's an email or, whatever it's going to be. And then you start to double click down into, well, what role do people play in behind those channels, whether it's a store or it's an app or whatever it's going to be. And then in behind that, what applications do automated digital or humans who are either, with augmentation, or in oftentimes what you do find is with analog processes and analog and the stitching together applications. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. What we're trying to do is see the journey right? And create a vision. But with service blueprints, we try and identify and have a kind of almost an architecture, and business architects use these all the time, of what channels, what people, what applications, and what processes need to be architected so that we deliver those journeys. And once we've kind of got a good, vision, a journey, and a service blueprint, then you can move into development, which is into epics and user stories. And epics and user stories are just a mean to break a journey down into key signature moments. So we might have a journey that's retiring, right? And an epic could be the formal notification that a client might get a year before retirement, triggered by their age. So it's the retirement letter. So that might be an epic. And then the user story is a way for you to start articulating what you want people to do and how you want people to feel when they get that letter. And then you'll end up with user stories that inform epics, which actually all strung together equals journeys. I presume you all know that already, and that's what it is. But prioritization, because you can try and envision a big journey, but you need to, as per the customer-centric flywheel on the left, you need to prioritize, which step or epic in a journey is going to have the most impact or is causing you most friction, because there's a defend offend piece here. And then once you prioritize, you usually have these kind of design principles that are usually applicable across all journeys. They should be. And then you kind of can get down into, well, what do we want the UX and the UI framework to look like so that people can experience the design that you're setting up and the principles applied to the prioritized kind of epics in an overall journey. And then you can get right down to architecture and APIs and all those kind of things. So these are the kind of tools that digital customer-centric leaders use in order to define what they're going to do when, so they can continuously improvise and improve customer-centric customer experience. And when we're thinking about journeys, I mean, there's a couple of things I've done an experience. What's the difference between customer user experience, experience design, user interface design? So you can read them yourselves afterwards. What I think is interesting is this idea of the double funnel or the viral loop on the right-hand side. And typically, when you're thinking of a journey, you're thinking of making people aware, targeting them so that you can acquire them as a prospect and a suspect, and then hopefully you'll activate them and they'll onboard, e.g., buy a product, and then the service. So normally we think if that's the kind of the kind of the journey, the brand or the marketing journey, but actually the purchase journey. But actually, I think it kind of loops out. It's like a pendulum. It goes out to the other side, because once you've got a customer, the magic's only starting. Because then you've got to think about how do you deepen your experience with them. Why? Because you want to retain them from a renewal perspective, but you want to upsell, next sell, cross sell. And oftentimes what you'll have to do is just manage those customers. And that's where the Google messy middle comes in. This whole idea that you'll be perpetually kind of managing and kind of harvesting your customers engaging with you, so that you not only acquire and activate them, but you keep them, you renew them, you upsell, you next sell, and you cross sell. So journeys should be, of course, about getting new clients. Journeys, really importantly, are about maintaining and deepening your relationship with clients as well. So that's all that I'm trying to cover there. So what I like to do then is say, okay, so how do we think about setting ourselves for success? Well, you need to have an engagement strategy, right? So I'll come back to that in a moment, because I think that's important. But underneath that, you typically have to build sub capabilities. You need to have user experience capability, digital marketing and execution, digital product management, all the time underpinning that, the ability to capture and convert data into insights. So it helps support that flywheel. And ultimately, you need change, kind of rapid or agile change management, development and deployment. So, even double clicking in under that, this is just a taxonomy of the kind of, capabilities, almost like if I was doing a skills audit, I'd be looking through all these lenses. And in fact, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see a sample of when I'm with an organization and I'm using, I don't use this one every time, but I'll use a variation of this. And I'll kind of green, amber, red an organization in terms of how proficient they are in having the capabilities and skills to execute really compelling journeys that are designed in journeys and experiences, etc., etc. Which is all back, as I say earlier on, to my journey management or my journey design and using the skills and tools, which is a lot about what's covered on strategy and culture and governance and change management. But the other kind of important slide from this section is, I think I covered this on the Saturday, the customer centric Saturday, is this whole idea of knowing the role that channels take at particular phases in the customer life cycle, or we could say in a journey, but this is kind of more or less a life cycle. So typically the life cycle is we develop a relationship with the customer, we sell and we serve them, and then we deepen the relationship. And again, that's the kind of the viral loop, if you can imagine, sitting across those three pillars. And what smart organizations do is they say, well, how did we do business in the past? So which channel did we depend on to do which job, i.e. to develop business, to sell and serve in relationship? You can go much, much more granular on that, but I've just kept it a thing. So, in the past, how do we do things in the present? How is it done today? And in the future, how would we like it to be? Overall, a fair assumption is that you want to increase your engagement with the client and you want to reduce your costs, mostly what's going on in the economics of business. So in here, we're trying to kind of just visualize this idea that what's the role that the store or the video or the phone or chat or web and mobile or social or Web3, whatever it is, what's the role they play in terms of helping you as a collective increase the engagement, but then reduce the cost to serve. So for instance, here, what we're looking to do, store, phone, web, social, we're looking to all those channels to be kind of outreach, to be engaging the market, engaging the customer or the colleague, right? It could be that as well. But once we grab them and bring them through a journey, you can see that we're going to try and, guide the customer much more towards a digital fulfillment of sales and service. So that's where you create the efficiencies while at the same time creating or magnifying engagement. And of course, you always want to relationship manage them. And perhaps when it comes to more complex relationships, you're going to facilitate that to be human-led, through stories and videos and so on and so forth. And that's kind of links into the channel hypothesis down the bottom, which is typically you will want your digital channels to do the heavy lifting, maybe not all of it, because not everybody's going to be digital, and sometimes humans have to step in to help people. It's the whole digital idea. But mostly digital can play just the humdinger role when it comes to, satisfying jobs, journeys, product fulfillment, service expectations for, the simple stuff that's usually high volume and low value. And that allows you to be smart and deploy your resources, again, real efficiency lens here, to using digital to maybe start or complete some of a journey when it's more complex, maybe when it's low volume and it's high value. So the mortgage and the pension tends to sit on the right. The overdraft and card application tends to be on the left-hand side of this kind of 2x2 grid over here. So that's that whole philosophy of thinking about how do you maximize, amplify engagement with the customer. You want to collect more data. You want to be more present with them. Go back to the Google messy middle. People spend lots of time online before they'll drop down into a purchase. So you want to be present with them, talking to them, guiding them. But you can't spend more money. In fact, you need to spend less because that's the golden rule of economics. Spend less to get more, business economics. So digital has really propelled us in that regard. And then in the pack I've given you as well, I've given you this kind of one kind of heavy slide on how to think about the marketing flywheel, right? And again, it all starts with insight. But as we and what do we mean by marketing? So marketing is kind of where you first touch the client's mind, right? So what we need to do is understand where the clients are. Sometimes we can't just say clients, we have to say what type of client. So it's a business client, is it a wealth client? Sometimes you'll be saying if it's a wealth client, so I've got a wealth business that I work with, and we've got 7 different personas because some of the wealth clients are business people, some of them are professionals, some of them are inheritors, etc., etc., etc. So we've broken down our market into personas or profiles. So we gather insights on each one of the personas or profiles, and then we figure out where that audience is going to be and what's the best way for us to get there. So that's the audience management. And then when we know where they are, we know who they are, where they are, and what they are, then we start thinking about what's the right channel for us to get in front of that client at the right time to attract them, and kind of look for them to come and engage with us on a journey. And that's where the content and the journey management needs to be really strong. So that's the intersection back with journey management. And then you can start thinking about, well, what's the role of web, mobile, social, email, but also physical marketing to help bring people down there. Marketing optimization is all about using the insights to push and pull and make sure you're spending your marketing in the right place to get the right client to talk to you about the right thing at the right time. You all get the idea. But of course, there's a lot of MarTech out there. So marketing and brand technologies, AI is really turning this on its head right now. And the kind of the core competency that's behind all that is the kind of the philosophy or the thought of e-commerce. So this is the whole idea of not just every day, not just every hour, perpetually evaluating your marketing flywheel and figuring out where you're monetizing your audience and making sure that you're bringing people down through the journeys and that ultimately you're getting a return on marketing. And that's the modern marketeers flywheel as they go along. How are we doing, everybody? Do a little check in. Am I doing okay so far? Any questions? Any queries? Sometimes I like to leave it quiet because I can just rest my voice and I rest your ears. It's also an opportunity for you to jump in. Everyone okay with that?
Yep, all good.
All good, Laura. Thank you for jumping in. Okay, brilliant stuff. So there'll be a few other slides in your pack as well. But I was talking there about e-commerce. But more generally, we've got to know this term in the digital world around digital product management. I don't like that it's called product. For me, it should be outcome management or journey management or experience management. But we have chosen in the world to call it digital product management. And essentially, these product managers or outcome managers or outcome owners, different terminology that people use. The essence of this is that, you don't own a product as a current account or a mortgage, right? You own a journey, you own an experience. So you own how people onboard, you own how people renew, you own how people get advice, right? So the whole idea of product managers or outcome owners is that we start giving our organizations and the people in our organizations not responsibility for just products, but we give them the responsibility. And you'll all, of course, remember, and if you don't, just a little reminder, you'll all remember Clay Christensen on the Saturday when we talked about the jobs to be done and the milkshakes and so on and so forth. That's in your pack as a little reminder, but you'll all remember that from the Saturday. The whole idea is the product owner or the outcome owner starts with the end in mind. What is the customer trying to do? What's the job that they're trying to do? And what product are they trying to hire to help them get that job done? Almost product managers have to think about being a CEO of their outcome, their experience, the journey that they want clients to go through. So again, think onboarding, think renewal, think advice, think about buying a home, all those kind of things. Think about retiring, magnificently happily. Their outcomes and product managers, they think about that. And what they do is they gather their teams around them. And this is a kind of introduction into Agile, because the whole idea of an Agile setup is it's a self-contained team with the product manager as the chief whip, right? And what they do is they help, put a business lens, but also a data and analytics lens, then a human-centric or a journey lens, along with a tech lens. And they work with colleagues, but they're the master puppeteer, right? About, building an experience that delivers value for the client and delivers a commercial return at a reduced cost with less risk, et cetera, for the client. So we'll come back and we'll visit these product managers again when we come to Agile, because it's an important part of that. But I just wanted to start sowing the seed that product managers start with engagement. They start thinking about who their audience is, where they are, how they're going to get their hands on them, or their et cetera, how they're going to get digitally present with them. And then they start to think about what's the journey to get them through not just seeing you, but wanting you and buying you and staying with you, et cetera. And this is a whole super competency in itself. When I was designing this program and a number of other programs for the IOB, I also designed a digital product management program. And there's kind of a snapshot of 10 of the kind of pillars of digital product management. I'm kind of toggling between two slides. I'm not going to dare read them, but it's this whole idea of they set a direction or a strategy for the experience that they're trying to deliver. Then they develop products and services to fulfill that, because they're the solutions ultimately, but they think about marketing, they think about the full journey and the supply chain that needs to go in behind it, right back to customer service, right back to the internal organization, right back to suppliers, and right back out again to how do they construct their channels to make sure, and indeed with their partners and their APIs that suck in partners, how do they want to put the sum of the parts together to create brilliant experiences. And they've got to be digital experiences, as we cover in this slide. I think we covered this on the Saturday, which is all about people just usually don't just work in the digital world. Sometimes they do, but we're all informed and influenced by the physical world around us. And sometimes we need a physical engagement to complement our digital engagement, as this journey just tries to articulate. So again, these product owners, while they might be digital, they are front and center thinking about their physical or their blended digital journeys and experience as well. Okay, that's what I really wanted to cover with you there. Can I do a time check with somebody, please? I've lost my phone.
On the dot.
8 on the dot, is it, or 8:10, Laura?
8 on the dot.
8 on the dot. Lovely. We're bang on time. So brilliant. Can I keep going? Permission to keep moving, folks. Everyone okay with that? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Excellent stuff. Right. Okay. So analytics, it sits next to engagement. And on the simple pretense that you've got to digitalize, and I know I covered you with you before, digitize, digitally transform, right? But you've got to create journeys in a digital environment, or even in a physical environment, where you can capture the data. So therefore you digitalize the physical journey, right? And that's just about service blueprints. It's all about, using applications, putting them in the hands of humans to serve other humans, right? So ultimately, there should be an application, whether it's self-serve or human served. And in that, we've got to capture data. But you're got to digitalize to capture the data. So that's why it sits in sequence next, because we could not have the AI summer that we're having right now unless we digitalized, and digitally transformed most of the world over the last 40 years since the dawn of the intranet. Because before that, there was the AI winter. So we've known how, neural networks have worked for 70, 80 years. Marvin Minsky, had this cracked in the 50s, right? So he had this whole idea of, we'll set up like really complex algorithms to, map the brain. The problem he had was there was no fucking data. It's only since the internet came and we digitized and digitalized and digital transformed most of the world that we've actually got, a la Google, messy middle, we've got the data, and now we've we've got the technology, right? So we've got the technology, the data to put back with the smarts to figure out how can we get machines to mimic human intelligence in such a way that we can outsource some of the drudgery, and we can leverage some, kind of matching or even higher intelligence to make us smarter and give us agency, right? And this whole idea of agency, I don't cover it in the slides, but agency is all about giving me superpowers, liberating my potential, right? And we use data and AI and data analytics, just what I call it, to give ourselves agency. And this is, as I say, this is not a new thing. Meant to replace this slide. Damn it, I meant to do that earlier on, because it's a 2020. But actually, the 2025 McKinsey report I shared earlier on probably subdues this. But we all know the pace at which AI is developing. I was with a team today, a bit of business, where I was actually working with McKinsey with a client, and I was trying to articulate that, look, 40 years for the web to develop, 4 years for generative AI. We're now in 4 months and 4 weeks cycles of, exponential growth in terms of the prowess, what people are able to do now. So we're in this wonderful world, and this kind of, we can all get dizzy about, the latest large language models. I want to strip it back, right? Let's go back to core principles, right? There are 5 stepping stones on the journey to data analytics, and loads of people are right back down at the baseline at number 1, which is the data. So you got to get your data in good shape, or you do not move forward unless you have your data, you store it, you clean it, you refresh it, you renew it. You can't really move up the ladder of value, and that's the ladder of value I kind of have on the left hand side. There's loads of ways, I'll show you a second. There's loads of different ways to illustrate it. But you got to be able to gather the data and sort the data. I mean, Disney, one of my favorite brands, one of my favorite experiences. And this is Disney Plus. This is my profile from a couple of years ago. It's actually not my profile. If you can double click in, you can see Callens. So that's us. Ben is my son. I don't know why he has a girl avatar. Gizmo is the dog. I don't know why it's an elephant, but it is. And Grace is my daughter, and she just loves Iron Man. So that makes sense to me. I can't figure the other two out. Anyway, is this whole idea that Disney Plus capture holistically our family's data, but it's able to subsegment us, and we're able to see ourselves as individuals, and we're able to see ourselves as a collective. And it gathers that data, and it does it to kind of, deliver value at the 4 categories of data analytics maturity. So from a descriptive perspective, it's able to tell all of us, or each one of our individuals, well, what did we watch before, right? So it just describes the past, right? It also, however, helps to perform what I call a diagnostic. So it helps us based on what we've done in the past. Based on what we did in the past, it makes some suggestions based on what all the other me's, people like me, did in the past. It makes some suggestions about what we potentially might to look at in the future. So it tells us about trends. But it mightn't go as far as have a Garvin recommendation. It might just have a families like you, or people in your kind of description, etc., etc. So it's just a diagnostic. It's a generality. So descriptive or diagnostic is more general. Predictive is when they get really down to kind of thinking, you've watched before, and we know other people who are very similar to you have also watched, and we think that you will really like this one. So they go at the specific as opposed to the general. So the difference between diagnostic is general, predictive, it tends to be much more prescriptive. I know I've got the same screenshot for both, but actually you've got a trending, which is we know that people in Ireland or people in Delgany are like this. But because you watched Dopesick, which was a brilliant program, I loved it, Michael Keating, etc., etc., you might like Dropout. So you can kind of see both going on at the same time. In general, these things are trending, and then a specific because you watched, you're probably going to like. And then, really importantly, in the prescriptive stage, which is where most of our minds think now about, generative AI and content creation and so on and so forth. Um, Disney Plus are doing really interesting things, like all the streamers are doing really interesting things. They've got so much data now that they're able to, and there's so much depth and so much kind of sophistication in their algorithms and in their models, their reasoning models, that they're now able to say, okay, we believe that we can create much more potent content than the old studios did in the past. So that's why you see the originals now. And really what all that Disney or Netflix and so on are doing with their originals, they're actually building content and they're building material to be super, what's the word I'm trying to think of? To be super attractive, wrong word, but you get the idea, to be really, really, really relevant based on really digging in and understand at an epic level, what kind of fight scenes people like, what romance scenes people like, what kind of storylines work, what feature lengths, etc., etc. And they're actually cutting movies based on data, not based on human direction and so on and so forth. And actually, beyond that, as we all know, is the power of CGI and content creation is like many of the movies now are just being they're autonomously designed, they're autonomously developed. And as we know, we're not far off this whole idea of choosing your own plot line. So this almost moving into real-time movies where I can pick a plot. So I might want a romance. And then in my romance, I might guide and direct the story based on my particular wants and needs. So that want and need might be, well, I don't want an Irish romance, right? I'm a bit adventurous and, I want an African romance. And when I'm in Africa, well, I want a Somalian experience and so on and so forth. So we'll actually get AI in real time building experiences, kind of streaming experiences from it. Not there yet, but on the way and coming soon. So I've labored a bit on that, but I'm doing it because I just think the Disney piece is kind of a very applicable way for us to kind of get a sense of there's a maturity. But lots of people are sitting back right down at the data. This is a framework that I use in my advisory practice. On the left, sorry, you've just got a different way to describe this kind of maturity model. You got to get the data first, then you've got to, get descriptive, know what happened, then the diagnostic, know why it happened, and then we know what will happen in the future, and then we'll almost prescribe what's really going to be a humdinger. And as I say, we're moving into decision automation now with the latest models. But on the right hand side is might be a useful diagnostic tool for you to use because data and analytics is holistic. You can apply it whether it's in the customer realm, the risk realm, the people in org realm, the ops realm, and what's all that the DIS does. It says you got to get your data sorted in the middle, then you got to build intelligence, which is kind of descriptive and diagnostic. And then you can come and move into automation with machine learning, and then you can move into really cognitive AI, which is deep learning, which is all the generative stuff that we see right now. And what I usually find useful is when I'm with an organization, might be with a board, and we might be kind of saying, well, what's our maturity? This is just a good maturity model, right? It's a typical spidergram. You'll all be aware of what they are. And it's the yellow line is really about plotting where are we mature? Where are we not mature? Where in our operations do we see this potential? And then when we get into that potential, often then I use this kind of value map to try and identify where's the value to the business. Now, this is a kind of a general one, so it covers customer, risk, people, finance in this case, operations, and tech I had in the spidergram, but you get the idea. And because what everyone thinks, oh my God, it's amazing, we get so much value from data and AI, but you really like my super caution is follow the money and get specific, right? So, and that's all about value-led prioritization. So I use these kind of value trees, where and this is one that you can take. It's pretty applicable. It's definitely applicable in financial services because it's built on my experiences and many clients and many years in financial services. So it gives you kind of typical target kind of impact. And it helps you to say to yourself, okay, well, I want to create value with data and AI. Right, where can I create value? So I think I can create value at the front with commercial effectiveness. So what do I want to do there? I can get into, well, how do I increase my profitability for customer? Well, how do I do that? I can get into using data and AI to behavioral segment my customers and do some propensity modeling about what they really want me to help them with and the kind of journey I'm going to help them along. And then you can see the kind of ranges of value. Doing this kind of value map really, really, really helps you to identify where to go and where to deploy your limited resources, because you always have limited resources. But on this slide, I always try and remind ourselves that there is more to life than money. It's up there with oxygen, of course, but there are other values, or there is other value, there is other currencies. So, right on the left, yes, definitely you got to solve business needs, commercial returns. But, as you kind of move along the benefits axis, sometimes it's not about solving the need today. It could be right about, defining tomorrow. Could become using data and AI to create a smarter culture, a smarter organization. It could be about productivity. So you might get the value not from more sales, but you might get it for productivity. Anyway, you get the whole idea. There's hard, maybe some softer metrics. And right over at innovation, most innovations actually fail, and failure is good because failure is feedback. And actually the value and the benefit when you're using data and AI is you can run experiments really quickly now and identify which innovations will work and which don't. So, AI applied or advanced innovation is a kind of thing doing the rounds right now, which links back to that McKinsey report I showed you earlier on. Right. Okay. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all right. We're kind of coming to the end of the content. And this is kind of, typically, the 6 spheres of an AI strategy. And it starts with data in the middle. But around the data, you got to figure out what the business is trying to do. And that's kind of back to my value map. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to create a difference? Where are we trying to create value? So you got to get your data organized. You got to really prioritize where you want to apply it. And then you're going to get the leadership right, your models, your tools, really focus on your adoption and ways of working. And, digital product management pretty much maps over into data product management. I don't think I call it data product management on the side, but it's the same thing. You get outcome owners, but outcome owners or product managers in the data sphere are building not digital journeys and experiences, they're building AI solutions, data and AI solutions to solve jobs that people do. They organize kind of squads and teams. They develop proof of concepts, they scale and reuse them, where they learn and move on. And that's the whole idea of innovation as we go. And I will recap on the assignment. Brilliant, Gary. Thank you very much for that. Spotted that in the corner. Last thing I'll mention is ethical standards. I mean, this just doesn't do it any justice at all, but there's so much responsibility with the power of these tools. Must do's and not do's. They're there on the screen in front of you. Can't believe that's Donald Trump from his last presidency, I do believe, April 2020. but he still lives on in my mind as maybe in the not to do category. Of course, now I've restricted all my travel options for the US by speaking out loud about such things, but so is life. One has to take a stand. Putting the customer first rather than putting the agenda first. You can see the rights and wrongs in front of you there. But of course, since I developed this slide, there's now a lot of rules and regulations. The EU AI Act, you get in a lot of trouble and lose a lot of value if you don't have the ethical footprint. I teach separately on this topic, and we do not have time to go into it today. All you need to do is be aware that when you're developing data and AI, you need to be responsible with the data. You need to know how the algorithm came to the conclusion that it came. You need traceability. You've got to make sure it's fair and it's ethical, it's not maltreating people, and you've got to be able to have traceability and be able to explain. So explainability is really important as well. They're the kind of key themes that we've got going on there as well. Right. Okay, can I do a time check? We'll try and get onto that assignment. Sorry now.
18.
18, super stuff, right? Perfect. We're goody gumdrops on time. The Age of AI, Banking's New Reality is a link down there. Really good, essential report, probably about 2 years, 3 years old right now. I think I picked it up in 23. It might be based on data 22. I just can't see it there. But they do a really good job of identifying, and again, the data might be even a bit old, but it's the model. I'm really interested in the philosophy here in the model, because what it does is it starts to help us see across the realm of roles in the operating model, and it gives the kind of the top 20 roles. Where's the potential for automation and where's the potential for augmentation? So automation is where we use AI to do jobs for us. Augmentation is where we use AI to do jobs with us. And we've got agents and assistants. Same thing. So agents do it for us, assistants help us. So the old lexicon is still alive and well. And if you get a chance to read the report, you're interested, it's really cool because it looks at the roles of yesterday and today, and then it maps how with AI those roles could evolve, sometimes cease. I hate to say, but there's, all like in the million years that we've been around, there's always been more of us. Question mark, is there going to be any more of us anymore? But we've probably out civilized the world. We're probably at peak human, as they sometimes say now. But it's just humans will be doing different things and higher value things, because we've always used tools to do lower value work so we can kind of pursue betterment. And really, AI is just doing nothing different than that before. Of course, a new dawn could come where it's become smarter than us and it could start using us. But I think we're a little bit away from that. But that's back to the ethics. We need to be really clever. And you're all following the Anthropic thing in the States with generative AI and the latest tools in the US military. But let's not go there again. Let's go back, keep on banking. It's definitely worth having a look at that report if you get a chance. And some really cool materials out there as well on the role of analytics and how to create value in insurance. So a couple of little references. Right. Okay. Assignment you did ask me to cover, and I did want to close on that. Right. So here we go. When it comes to assignment 1, which I will be asking you to do after our next Tuesday, which I think is in 2 weeks' time. Forgive me if I have the date wrong. I think it's on a Tuesday as well. Yeah, I think it's the 24th or something like that. On the 24th, I'm going to be covering agile innovation and open, right? So I'm going to be doing pretty much the same as this. I'll give you the materials in advance. I'll talk you through how to think about the materials and apply it to your organizational setting. And by the time we've finished on the 24th, I will have equipped you with the knowledge and some frameworks on how to think about and evaluate your organization's current level of maturity on the 7 building blocks. How customer centric you are, how efficient you are, how digitally engaged you are, how analytically strong you are, how agile you are, how innovative you are, how open you are. Okay. So, and I'm talking through how I want you now to think about the assignment. And you actually should be starting the assignment now, by the way, because you have 4 of the 7 competencies. We've covered them now. So you should be starting to think about what use case am I going to work with, right? So my use case is typically your team, your business, your strategy. It's something you're vested and involved with because that's where you get the value out of the learning. And you can do it on a fictitious one. Sometimes people say, "Well, I can't do it in my organization," or "I'm not working." And I say, if you're not working, do it on your last organization, or do it on a project or a charity maybe you're working with, or if you're up in the golf club or in the tennis club or whatever. Think about a real life use case, because what I want you to do is use the competencies and the frameworks to assess the capability that you have today, which is, sorry, I've written some of this down. Hopefully it'll make sense as well afterwards with the voiceover here. So I want you to identify the dark triangle, right, where you are today. And then based on where you think you want to go in the future, i.e. what your strategy is, start identifying where you think you need to be in the future, because I want you creating a delta map, right? That's all that this is. It's a gap analysis, or it's what I call a delta map. It's evaluating where your maturity is today and where you believe your maturity needs to be in the future in order to execute your ambitions. And strategy is just an ambition. So really, really, really simply, all that I want you to do is, and all I want you to do is complete one of these. Now, the pass mark is one slide, all right? So there's the basic pass mark, right? And the basic pass mark is customer centricity. And you might say, you might be filling this out and you're saying, well, we score low today. Now you can put in a 1 to 10, a 1 to 100 scale, superimpose it, I don't mind, or just keep it generic like that. And I'm really happy if you just do it intuitively, right? Because you're busy people, your time, you're brilliant to be spending time at this late hour of the evening with me. So what I want you to do is, it's just you can go as deep and scientific as you want, but I want you to just practice this. And if you only have the time, just do it at a kind of a proxy level, if at an indicative level or an intuitive level. So you can say, we're low, we're medium or high, and in the future we need to be medium or high or supersonic, right? Whatever it's going to be. Because and sometimes people come back and say, oh, we're okay, we're good, we've got that. We should be high, we are high. Job done. We just need to sustain it. And I would be expecting you to identify then, in order to sustain it, what would you do? So what I want you to do in the first instance, on the left-hand side, score where you are and where you need to be intuitively on each of the 7 core competencies. And then you can give yourself an overall one at the bottom. And then you give your score. And then over on the right-hand side, I want you to articulate, which I think I wrote on this slide. Yes, please insert supporting commentary to support why you assess the capability as you did. So why you said you're low. So you need to kind of just explain. I believe that we're not very customer centric because, we don't measure customer experience. We don't have a customer experience team. I know you all do, of course you do, but making it up and being aggressive to prove a point. And we kind of don't really value this idea of customer centricity. Therefore, you're going to really low. And then what I want you to do then is also articulate, in the future, I believe we need to develop a medium or a high or a supersonic level of customer centricity because, right? And the because could be something like, we believe that Revolut is stealing all our customers, and because they deliver a better experience. If we don't up our game, we're going to fall behind. And in order to do that, we need to focus in on the following areas. Now, to help you to do that, so we can say the pass mark can be just, score yourself and give me some rudimentary comments. For each one of the competencies, I'm going to single out a framework that you can use. And the framework that I'm going to ask you to think about using for customer centricity is this. Because when you're answering the question about really how customer centric do we need to be in the future, you should be looking at this saying, okay, how good do we need to be at segmentation, at ethnography, at persona mapping, at intelligence? How good do we need to be in customer experience design and journey maps and so on and so forth. So this is your cheat sheet, right? So this is the framework that you should use to say, here's where we were in the past, here's where we need to be in the future. And this is your kind of ready reckoner to help you to do that. Now, you can go deeper, you can go down and use all the materials, you can do your own way. This is a level 9 program. I'm not going to give you the answer, nor am I really allowed to give you, such direction, but I'm going to do that because it's a complex area. And the better direction I can give you, the more I hope you will learn and the better experience you'll actually get from this overall program. So and you'll get all of this in a pack, and I'm going to get this sent out to you tomorrow, right? So you'll get these slides in PowerPoint, and I'll also be including, this is your customer-centric framework. So these are the lenses I want you to look through to evaluate where you are today and where do you think you need to be in the future. This is the lens I'll be asking you to look through efficiency at. We'll cover that this evening. This is the lens I'll be asking you to evaluate your capability on digital engagement. And this is the lens that I'll be asking you to use. And sorry, the yellow line is incomplete as I see it there. This is the lens I'm suggesting you use to evaluate your maturity in your operating model and in your organization. And then next time when we get together, I'll be giving you a set of slides on Agile. This will be the one I'll ask you to use there. I'll be giving you one on innovation maturity, actually going to give you the scoring template. And then I'm going to give you a real dirty eye bleeder on this whole idea of partnership and open business strategies. But don't worry, that we'll get to that one. I'll explain that one in the time. So I'm going to give you this as a bit of a stretch assignment. You can use it all or some of it as you need to, and so on and so forth. And that's the assignment. So again, I'm saying I'm pretty close to time here now. I'm going to send you out all these slides. There's a little bit of instruction there. Don't worry. Every time we meet, I'm going to talk you through this. Basically, I want you to do a gap analysis, where you are today, where you think we need to be in the future, describe why you are where you are, and describe, using the frameworks, what you think needs to be done to move your maturity to the desired point in order to achieve your strategy. Couldn't be easier than that. Stop, pause for reaction. Gary, did that help?
Yeah, that was spot on, Garvin, because I was struggling to link some of the stuff you were going through with the exercise. So you've actually helped me now to understand the stuff we're covering and how to use it for the actual assignment. So thank you for that.
Yeah, good. Leanne, you okay? Coming on screen there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how detailed we need to go. I know you're kind of saying it depends on yourself, nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. I can't tell you that. I'm not allowed to tell you. Well, I am, but I'm going to tell you a little bit. But again, level 9 program, kind of leave that to your discretion, right? If you just give me one of these pages, right, that's kind of your pass mark, right? Do a reasonably good job. Just put it all on one page or 2 pages, right? That's okay. You don't have to do it in a slide. You can do it in a Word document as well, Leanne, right? The honors, in fact, the distinction level would be where people come back and they give me a score for each one of these. They kind of really get down to evaluating their organization against these. And that's just a level of detail and time, okay? But detail and time means 2 things. But most importantly, Anne, the deeper you go with this and the more time you spend on it, hopefully, the more you learn. And therefore, the better the return on the investment for you, Leanne, okay? And therefore, the better the mark you get, if that makes sense.
Do we kind of have to, like when we're saying where we're getting the information from, do we need to, oh God, why is the word gone out of my head? Like, reference properly, like kind of Harvard style, or is it just kind of mentioning the different frameworks?
Yeah. So don't, so great question, right? So just reference the frameworks, right? For me, that's all I need to know, right? And if you're playing back, I'll be able to recognize that you've used them and so on and so forth, right? So, yeah. By the way, I don't negative score, I only positive score. So I'm going to try and get you over the line, right? So You work with these to the level of depth and sophistication you can, and that'll define how well you do in your results, right? And that's absolutely tied back to the more you use it, the more you learn, and the more you'll be able to adapt it, right? If you you'll actually be giving me back. I'll give you these slides, and you can actually give them back to me. Do you know what I mean? That's what lots of people do. So they replace engagement strategy with this, and they actually write in their comment on their engagement strategy, and they write in their comment on their user experience, right? So that's brilliant. That's kind of moving towards merit, and distinction zone, Leanne, right? So you'll get all these. You're going to use them as you see fit. Some people come back and they wipe the floor with me, and they give me 30 slides of material back, and they do their own frameworks and so on and so forth. Knock yourself out. Go for it if that's where you want to go. But, I'm just going to try and give you as much as I can to help you to do this as best you can. This is probably, Leanne, a really good example of how to use it. So lots of people will just take, the frameworks, and they will kind of just do a little matrix like this, and they'll say, so this is the one for innovation. Everyone just uses this for innovation, right? But I can't make it too easy for you. So some people, what they'll do is they'll just do a 6-line matrix, or they might do a 27-line matrix, because there's probably 27 data points on this, and they'll score their organization in something that looks like this. And that's really moving towards that kind of merit distinction zone, Leanne, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And what we can do the next time we're together, sometimes it's useful for, I've actually done one in class with people, so I'm happy if you folks want me to do one with you. I'll take 5 minutes and we'll do one very quickly, and I'll show you what it looks like. Or really importantly, sometimes bring along into class and say, I've done this, does it look right, Garvin? The more we get practical, the better, the sooner easier it'll be, right? So I encourage you to actually start trying between now and when we meet. And then we'll make a bit of time the next time we meet, and we'll be able to have a quick chat about it, Leanne, and everybody, if that's okay. Brilliant. Don't use ChatGPT to get your answer. Use ChatGPT to help you. You've got to do a little, you all know you got to do your little submission test, or the IOB will do that, right? But I'll know if you use ChatGPT, I'll know it straight away, and I won't be kind to you because I don't want you outsourcing your thinking. If you help it to really sharpen and stretch and make your case really compelling, brilliant. But if you use it and you just give it to me, not good. So I couldn't say it any blunter than that, if that's okay. Use it to augment. Don't outsource to ChatGPT. The checker in the IOB system will do it well. I work with AI day in, day out. I can see it. So and don't use it. And I don't want you to use it. I want you to use it to help you, to superpower you. I don't want it to replace you, because then you're not learning, because you won't have learned a jot. And I'm in it for the learning, if that's okay. So is that okay, folks? I know I've gone over time.
Thanks, Garvin. That's great.
Beautiful people. I love you for staying a little bit extra with me. Hopefully that's okay. Hopefully I've given you guidance and direction. Wonderful to be with you. I'll see you in 2 weeks again. Any queries, pop them through. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Anastasia, as well. You've been wonderful. I'll let you go. It's late in the evening.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Garvin.
Good luck. Well done.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.